Good morning,
Good morning.
and what a beautiful morning it is. Let's take a moment to greet one another. Someone you have met and know well, or someone you've never met. And don't forget to wave to the people in the box. You never used to have to say that. Morning, Sam. Okay. Okay. To be continued at coffee hour, of course. Couple of announcements, maybe more than a couple. First of all, and most importantly, we welcome this morning Reverend Hank Purse as our guest speaker. Welcome, Reverend Hank. He happens to be a childhood friend of Reverend Tony's. Their mothers were dear friends. And he has served churches in New England, Massachusetts, and Maine, mostly over a period of 26 years. And he now lives in Medford, Mass, which I understand is actually Medford, Massachusetts. Yes. And that's only because I lived in Boston that I know that. Okay, other things to know. Choir rehearsal begins at 11:30 today. The caregivers of LGBTQIA and young people will meet at 11:30 also. If this is your first time here or your 100th and you have some questions about UUCD, you can come to the Connections Corner with your coffee for a quick check-in. A member of the membership committee and or the board of trustees will be in the front corner by the chimes to answer or explore with you. So that's this morning. Now, as I understand it, our dear President Margaret Henderson has a few things to say.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I will be brief, perhaps even curt. Please come help us build bridges. You have 5 opportunities. 1. Table with a friend at Pride Day in Bethel or in Danbury. There will be sign-up sheets on clipboards being passed around during coffee hour. 2. Staff a table at Juneteenth. Sign-up sheet on the clipboard with all the details. 3. Come to one of the town hall meetings on May 18th or May 20th, one or the other, and participate in dialogue and information to prepare for, number 4, UU Danbury's annual meeting after the service on June 1st. 5. One question we'll be voting on there is, should UUCD join the Connecticut for All Coalition? Please pick up a handout on the table as you leave to see what they stand for. Thank you all for being people who will stand up, show up, and fight back.
Thank you, Margaret. Okay. I believe I covered all the announcements. Oh, no, I didn't. Well, the rest of them are in your order of service. The Board of Trustees meets on Monday at 7. On Tuesday, the Caring Circle at 10:30, and Spiritually Speaking at 7. We are a busy congregation. Wednesday, Men Converse Over Coffee at 10. Talk to Jeff Asher. Jeff, raise your hand. Jeff Asher, raise your hand. That's Jeff Asher. Okay. Or Joe Gelati. Joe, where are you? If you are interested in being a man who converses over coffee on a Wednesday. Okay. Friday the 16th, deadline for the June comment if you have anything important to say. And Saturday, the Palestine discussion group at 2 in the lower level of Fellowship Hall. So that's what's happening around here. And on Sunday, next Sunday, Reverend Sierra Marie will be leading the service on When Pigs Fly and more lessons from the kids. So that's what's happening now. Sterling would like to help us light the chalice. Come on up, Sterling. And if you will join me in the words which are in your order of service. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and justice is its light. This is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, and seek and speak the truth in love, to help one another and celebrate life. Our hymn of welcome is number 368. Now let us sing. Words will be on the screen.
let us sing to the power of the faith within. Sing to the power of the faith within. Lift up your voice, be not afraid. Sing to the power of the faith within. Now let us sing. Sing to the power of the hope within. Sing to the power of the hope within. Lift up your voice, be not afraid. Sing to the power of the hope within. Now let us sing. Sing to the power of the love within. Sing to the power of the love within. Lift up your voice, be not afraid. Sing to the power of the love within. Now let us sing. Sing to the power of the joy within. Sing to the power of the joy within. Lift up your voice, be not afraid. Sing to the power of the joy within.
So good to be together. Let's say our children's affirmation words are on the screen. We are Unitarian Universalists. We are people with open minds, loving hearts, and helping hands. We care for the earth and each other. I am curious if any of the kids in the room know the story of Cinderella. Do you know that story, Sterling? Do you know that story now? I don't know if that story's told. Do you know that story, Lana? You know that story, Zella? Okay. All right. I just wanted to check. I have another version of that story written by Catherine Childs called Cinderette and Her Not at All Wicked, actually very helpful stepmother. For as long as she could remember, Cinderette had a stepmother. Certainly, once upon a time, she had both a mother and a father, and then just a father, as her mother had died in a tragic magic accident. But because her father was lonely, and perhaps because he lacked adequate grief support, very soon after he became a widower, Cinderette's father married the witch from next door. Now, for various psychological and relational reasons, Cinderette's father had a hard time feeling close to his daughter. He also had a hard time seeing her strengths and abilities. As an example, she was never assigned more chores around the house than what she'd always done from the time she was small. In the morning, she swept out the ashes from the fire from the night before and put on a new fire in the fireplace. It made sense because she was the first one awake every day, and besides, she liked fires. Now, all of this free time, freed from working around her house, allowed Cinderette to grow up spending lots of time outside and also reading lots of books. As a result, she grew up to be a very smart, very capable, and very emotionally stable young person who could recognize that though her father loved her, he had difficulty showing his emotions because of various patriarchal social factors. She also recognized that her stepmother made her father reasonably happy, and though they had their quarrels, Cinderette and her stepmother got along reasonably well. And her stepmother was a good person who could be counted on to help if there was a problem. And boy, was there ever a problem. You see, her father had received a notice that a nearby prince would be holding a big party to choose his bride. Because of many of those same patriarchal and social factors mentioned before, Cinderette's father had decided, without consulting Cinderette, of course, that the best thing for Cinderette was that she attend the party and make sure that the prince married her. So Cinderette went straight away to her stepmother They both agreed that something must be done because this particular prince was particularly shallow and only cared about physical beauty, and there was no way that Cinderette was going to marry a person who would not love and recognize the many attractive qualities of her personality. But Cinderette, it ought to be pointed out, was possessed of those physical characteristics which in her time and place were socially considered attractive. There was no way that this shallow prince wouldn't notice Cinderette. Their first solution was to use her stepmother's magic to make Cinderette look ugly. But after much discussion, they could not find a way to do that wouldn't be preying on terrible stereotypes about minority populations in the kingdom. After a long discussion of the destructiveness of ableism, fat phobia, and racism in the fairy tale world, Cinderette and her stepmother, decided to sleep on the problem. The next morning, her stepmother had the solution. When Cinderette's father took her shopping for her dress for the party, Cinderette would insist on getting a suit, citing its practicality for rewear at fairy garden parties. Then, once she had left for the prince's party, Cinderette would turn herself into a young man for the duration of the party so as not to attract the prince's attention. The potion that her stepmother gave her would only last until midnight, so she had to make sure to leave the party before then. Everything went according to plan except one thing. At the party, the prince, in a shining example illustrating that progressive sex education is not the cure for being shallow, though he'd never been particularly attracted to another man before, the prince fell wildly for the handsome young man because of his physical beauty. He tried in vain to speak with the young man all evening, but failed to catch his eye, catching only his wing-tipped shoe as he fled the party just before the stroke of midnight. After the party, the prince searched the kingdom in vain for the young man who owned the matching wing-tipped shoe. Of course, when he knocked on Cinderette's door, her stepmother answered and told him quite truthfully that there were no young men living at their residence. Cinderette lived happily ever after, completing many upper-level academic degrees and choosing a spouse for herself who recognized her for her many strengths and abilities. So ends the story, and I'm going to invite Maisie to come forward for the lantern to bring our chalice light downstairs, and I'm going to invite Nell to come and get the basket to collect your food. We'll sing This Little Light of Mine while the kids come around and collect food donations for Dorothy Day Hospitality House.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Good morning. That was an excellent story. Not only did I enjoy it, I also thought I need to get a copy of that for myself. That's great. Let us open our hearts in prayer. Thou, nameless one, creator, preserver, and benefactor, We pause this day to give thanks for our mothers and for all of those who have been mother and caregiver to us. Our hearts are flooded this day with wide emotions, but we are most of all grateful for those who birthed us to life, who nurtured and sustained life, loved and sacrificed for us, and in their own ways showed us your grace and your face. As we come into this house this hour, show to us support. Show to us nurture, grace, and love. May we this day remember the original meaning of Mother's Day, being a day calling for the end of war and calling for peace. We think of all those people around the world suffering under war and threats of war, those suffering violence, whether in war zones or in peaceful villages. We come this day thanking you for the wonder and the mystery and the beauty of the home. We thank you for what our home has meant, for the nurture of good parents, the faithfulness of good children who have responded to life with reason, compassion, and joy. May we learn to be faithful in all our relationships with each other and live lives of commitment to our beliefs and our compassion to the world. Amen, and blessed be.
And now it's time for our milestones. This time of sharing milestones is a time of coming together as a community in quiet contemplation, a time when we can offer healing and hope, and a time for giving thanks and offering gratitude for blessings great and small. In order to create this space for one another, we refrain from making announcements or sharing political opinions. If you're with us online, in the little box, please write your milestones in the chat if you would wish for us to share them. I invite those of you who wish to share silent milestones by placing stones in the water to come forward and do so now. Bless you.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life a shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Thank you, and please be seated. It is lovely to be here with all of you. I remember in the very first church I ever served, which was up in Auburn, Maine. I went in as an interim minister. Their previous minister had been there for over 10 years. She was tremendous and dynamic, and just did so much for that church. But the role of an interim minister, as some of you might remember, is to go in, kick the tires. And one of the things that we realized that we needed to do was also sort of change some of the leadership. And so one of the positions that got changed was the collector. I don't know if churches still have collectors, but basically the person who sort of takes your checks in and sort of balance it against your pledge each week and that sort of thing. And also the previous collector hadn't sent out any notices for years, it seemed like. So the new collector was being very very proactive. And I remember getting a phone call from when the first set of notices went out saying how much money you donated so far this year, how much money you still owed. I got a very upset phone call from a church member, and he said, he said, Hank, I'm there every week, and I said, yeah. I said, every week I put money into the basket when it comes around, but it came up empty. It says I haven't contributed anything, and that's not right. And I said, oh, okay. So, do you write a check? He goes, no, I don't write a check. I said, oh, do you put your money in one of those little envelopes? Some of you might remember those. You used to have those little envelopes with your name on it or a number on it, for secrecy. And he said, oh, no. And I said, oh, how do we know that it's your money? He goes, oh, well, I'm the one. Each week I fold my $20 bill into the shape of it's an origami swan, and that's how you know that it's mine. Whether you pay online or pay by check or fold your givings into a various origami shape, the offering will now be given and joyfully received. Mother's Day to My Children by Daisy Zamora. I do not doubt you would have liked one of those pretty mothers in the ads, complete with adoring husband and happy children. She's always smiling, and if she cries at all, it is absent of lights and camera, makeup washed from the face. But since you were born of my womb, I should tell you, ever since I was small like you, I wanted to be myself. And for a woman, that's hard. Even my guardian angel refused to watch over me when she heard. I cannot tell you that I know the road. I often lose my way. And my life has been a painful crossing, navigating reefs in and out of storms, refusing to listen to the ghostly siren who invite me into the past. Neither compass nor binnacle to show me the way. But I advance. Go forward holding to the hope of some distant port, where you, my children, I'm sure, will pull in one day after I've been lost at sea. Saeed Say Refahizadeh, whose father abandoned his mother and him when he was 9 months old. His mother would say, Muhammad went off to fight for the world's socialist revolution. His mother told him this with a proud determination when he was a child. The story took great effort to sustain years and years later. And he said that there were even times when his mother could not follow that same narrative. In his book, where the title of my sermon comes from today, When Skateboards Will Be Free, Saeed writes, "We were poor, my mother and I, living in a world of doom and gloom, pessimism and bitterness, where storms raged and wolves scratched at the door. Often she would inform me when we were late on rent, or when she suspected she was about to get fired, or when the price of bread had gone up again. All of it categorical evidence against capitalism and how deserving we would be when the revolution came. At times, our deprivation entered the realm of the absurd. On one occasion, I mustered the courage to ask my mother to buy me a skateboard. And after much cajoling, she finally agreed to go and have a look. There, in the middle of the sports department, sat a giant metal bin filled with skateboards in bubblegum bright colors and a sign read $10.99. I want the green one, I said. Once the revolution comes, my mother said, everyone will have a skateboard because all skateboards will be free. And then she took me by the hand and led me out of the store. I pictured in precise detail a world of long, rolling, grassy hills where it was always summertime and boys would skateboard up and down the slopes. Now, I loved that story when I first read it, not because my family were socialists, but it was the sort of thing that my mom would say as an explanation as to why we didn't have the things others had, or why we behaved or believed differently than others in our community. My mother grew up in a very strict Presbyterian church in Northern Ireland. She told the story to me a few years ago that as a child, she and her mother and her sister her father hardly ever came to church, but her mother and her sister would sit up in the balcony of their very large Presbyterian church there in Belfast, Northern Ireland. And when they had communion at that church, which happened, I believe, like 4 times a year, my mother said that she would watch from the balcony, and they'd look down to see all the other people getting up, going forward to take communion. And even other people up in the balcony would get up and go downstairs to take communion. And my mother said that she asked her mother, why don't we take communion? We're as good as they are. And that her mother turned to her and said, they are the sheep and we are the goats. That stern Calvinism of the elect gets ingrained into your DNA. And even though my mother left that church at the age of 14 and joined the non-subscribing Presbyterian Church of Ireland, who are our Unitarian Universalist cousins, and who have a name even more complicated than Unitarian Universalist, the non-subscribing Presbyterians. And even though my father grew up, my father's family comes from generations of Unitarians here in New England, and they even met at church. Still, my mother's that strict Calvinist DNA made it into mine and my sister's DNA as well. Why we believed and behaved differently from those in our community, I'd get one of those answers, not about socialism, but about our beliefs, the things that we do that other people don't do, and why that was, and how hard it was to balance that when your friends had different games or did different things or ate different food. For most of us, our mothers, our parents, those adults who nurtured us, they wanted us to have the same outlook at the world as they do. Which is fine until that day finally arrives when you realize that the skateboards will never be free. Some parents try not to impress their opinions on their children because of issues that they might have had, that they might have been taught when they were children, which is sort of teaching in the negative. But the truth is, our parents taught us their beliefs, whether it was explicit or implicit. They taught us their beliefs by how they lived. And for those of us in charge of children now, we often do the same thing. What's the saying? Live so that when your children think of fairness, they think of you. The truth is, for most of us, our parents wanted us to have the same outlook. And then there came a day when we realized that our mothers, our fathers, our parents, our guardians are not the gods we thought they were. That they're just people. My good friend, the Reverend Adam Tierney Elliott, recalls a time when his father, who was a labor lawyer and a politician in the state of Maine, had brought him to the State Museum as a child. Adam remembers looking at photos of children working in factories and mills and asking him, why were these children working in these horrible factories? And his father, once again, let me remind you, a labor lawyer and a Democratic politician in the state of Maine, his father's answer was, because Republicans hate children. Which Adam was like, okay, that's why. He said the answer was fine until he discovered that his mother's parents were Republicans, which caused him great grief for many years until he had his own epiphany about his parents and their humanness. There's that story of Winston Churchill, who had been on a ferry with his parents and got momentarily separated from them, and after a few minutes of searching saw them. And he saw 2 very ordinary people wearing the clothes that his parents had been wearing earlier that day. He was shocked by that recognition. something special happens in that moment. Maybe something that's not easy to accept, but right at that moment, right at that realization, he matured. At that moment, he became, if not an adult, at least someone on the road to adulthood. At some point in our development, we make a break with our parents. At some point, we realize that our parents are like everyone else. And thank goodness. Because how awful would it be to always be less than them? We need, at some very primal level, we need to have the experience of seeing behind the curtain, to see who was pulling the levers, and maybe even to discover why. Ours is an experiential faith, meaning that we recognize that how we have seen the world, how we have been shaped by the world, influences how we understand our place in the universe, our understanding of the sacred, our relationship with what some call God. Acquaint thyself at first hand with the divine, or with the deity, Acquaint thyself at first hand with deity. That's what Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote in his 1838 famous sermon to the graduates of Harvard Divinity School. Acquaint thyself at first hand with deity. What Emerson was saying was, don't just believe what other people have told you. Don't just believe what you have read in great books. Don't only believe what others who lived thousands of years before you in some very different place with some very different experiences. Don't think that their experiences matter any more than yours. This is as true in matters of religion as it is in matters of your mother. Greeting cards tend to portray mothers in ways that may not line up with your experience of mom. For any of us who, on Friday, I went to the local CVS, and I was like, where is the mothers? Where are the cards for Mother's Day? There's the aisle full of men. Okay, and we all were there going through, like, trading each other's cards. Okay, oh, this one fits a bit better for me, right? Though I have some sympathy for the writers of Mother's Day cards, because writing a Mother's Day sermon isn't easy as well. It is, in fact, the least popular sermon that ministers give, which may be why I'm here and Tony's not. Yeah, no. Oh, and let me just say, too, in case you didn't know, Wednesday is Tony's birthday. So, you can send him a little email. There we go. Let me tell you a bit about my experiences of Mother's Day throughout my life. Mother's Day was not something that we did in our household, in part because my mother is British, and it's not really a thing there in Great Britain. And also because on Mother's Day, my mother usually went to an invitation-only folk camp here in Connecticut called Indian Neck. And she would go with her friends over this weekend, over Mother's Day weekend. So my mom was never around on Mother's Day. She was off with her friends, having a party, saying it's a folk music festival, but really, it was a party. Now I'd like you to imagine back to my very first Mother's Day sermon that I gave at my first church up in Maine. It wasn't a bad sermon, just not one really about mothers or Mother's Day, because for me, Mother's Day was no big deal. However, by the time I was halfway through my sermon, I could tell that things weren't going well by the looks on the faces of the people in the pews. I was new to ministry. I got flustered. I tried to adjust, which just made the sermon get worse and worse. I should have guessed by the large number of older women wearing boutonnieres that everyone at the First Universalist Church in Auburn, Maine, expected something different from the sermon I was giving. I guess I should have guessed that the folks were expecting a sermon about dear old mum, And that's not what they got. I should have stopped my sermon and said something like, look, I know the sermon isn't going well, and you know what? Many people's experiences of their mothers weren't all that great either. But I didn't. I just kept digging deeper and deeper. Why is it so difficult for pastors of all ages to preach on Mother's Day? And it has nothing to do with faulty relationships of clergies and their mothers. It has to do with the fact that usually on a Sunday, everyone assumes that the minister is the religious expert in the room. Or if not, that the people would have expected that the minister will have studied up on whatever it is that the topic was for that Sunday. The minister would have spent hours studying and researching and talking about things and working it out, so that when they gave their sermon, people would feel secure in the knowledge that the person leading the service knows what they're talking about. But when it comes to mothers, everyone is an expert. Because everyone has had one, because everybody's had a mother, and everyone's experience of them is different. Some were great, some were awful, most are in between those poles. Talking about motherhood gets even more complicated because not only can we talk about our mothers, but there are folks who didn't have mothers, and folks who wanted to be mothers and couldn't, and folks who are mothers but wish that they weren't. On and on and on. The word complex does not do the situation justice. Mothers are not perfect, and of course, neither are we. But we must try to create opportunities in our own lives to forgive and be forgiven. Because just the same way that we all have that moment of realization that our parents are not perfect, we each have a moment when we realize that we ourselves are not perfect. And that is okay. When it happens, it is just another moment of maturity. And of course, on this Mother's Day, I want to remind all of us that motherhood should be optional. It has been close to 3 years since the Supreme Court of the United States overturned Roe versus Wade, upending 50 years of access to abortion. And our Congress seems to be planning to cut basic support for children, while yet trying to entice young people to boost birth rates with $5,000 baby bonuses. The news around women's issues, as so often happens, gets pushed to the back when we hear more stories about tariffs and Greenland. The politicians behind these cruel laws are appealing not only to their own base, but to the basest of human emotions, their own desires for power. Conservative politicians have been willing to talk themselves up against the wall so that no one can claim that they aren't pro-life enough. Across our country, laws around abortion access have been removed, including exceptions for rape and incest. Doctors are jailed. They're talking about jailing women who get abortions. In the past, I thought that perhaps we were witnessing the last gaps of the religious and political right in our country, who seem to be coming after every liberty given to us in the last 80 years. It is heartbreaking and it is hard. At my mother's funeral this past winter, one of the other speakers got up and said that there were many times in their life they would ask, what would Maggie do? Maggie being my mom. What would Maggie do in a situation like this? And I think that's the thing that we have to remember. What would our mothers do? And in moments like that, you have to sort of put away those feelings of and thoughts of your mother that get complicated, and just think of the best parts of your mom. My mom could be dismissive and curt. I'm using that word you used earlier. But she could also be powerful. And at a time when we want to feel, when we do feel overwhelmed, when we do feel forgotten and powerless, I think of my mom. I think of what she would want us to do. To stop, to get in the road, to get in the streets. This past week in Worcester, ICE officers went and snatched a mother and her child off the streets. And what was so amazing was watching the neighbors, mostly women, mostly white women, coming into the street and trying to get in the way of ICE. For those of us who are white, who understand that the privilege that is given to us, privileges that are often, once again, in the negative. We aren't followed when we go to stores. We aren't pulled over by the police as often, those sort of privileges. But when you see people getting out in the street, confronting immigration agents, that is what's going to turn the tide. When we stand up. As Unitarian Universalists, we believe that all bodies are sacred. Since 1962, Unitarian Universalists have been steadfast in showing up for reproductive justice and speaking up for women's rights, speaking up for the rights of all people. As Unitarian Universalists, we believe that every person has the right to determine if, when, and how they want to have children. As people of faith, this commitment is part of our sincerest religious values. As Unitarian Universalists, we believe that women are fully human and should be treated as such. And it is crazy that I need to say that. But women's bodies are still thought of as being the property of the state. No one should become a mother because of bad planning or an accident or in cases of violence. By the end of Said Sarah Fahizadeh's book, his mother, Martha, seemed much more human. She left the Socialist Workers' Party and rejoined the rest of the world. And she began to show her love towards him and his family in ways that are much more normal. And that is the hope that all of us can have. That all of us at some point come to a place where we can love our mothers or begin the work of forgiving our mothers, because we realize that we too are flawed. We too are ordinary. We too are working on ourselves and working on the world, and a world that needs wisdom and beauty and splendor that is found in motherhood today as it was in yesterday. May we be inspired to go out into the world with the thoughts of our mothers, the love of our parents in our hearts, to go out and to change the world. Our hymn of celebration. The words will be up there. It is number 32 in our hymnal. Now thank we all our God. Please rise as you are able and willing.
With hearts and hands and voices. and blessed peace to cheer us. The one eternal God will blessed heaven adorn. For thus it was, is now, and shall be evermore.
Would you join me in the words as we extinguish our chalice? We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world until we are together again. There ought to be a hall of fame for mamas, creation's most unique and precious pearls. And heaven help us always to remember that the hands that rock the cradle rules the world. Our worship is over. Our service begins. Go in peace. Amen. Oh, thank you.